Hello and welcome to another episode of Colorado Politicking. I'm Pat Poblete, and we're kicking things off this week with a focus on the congressional representative from Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. And we're going to start off with political correspondent Ernest Luning. Ernest, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert kind of grabbed the headlines this week for a rather unsavory encounter with another member of Congress. You covered this throughout the week, so tell us what's going on here.
Here in Colorado, we're used to seeing Lauren Boebert trending on Twitter. This last week, like you say, the Western Slope Republican's been trending in national headlines after a video surfaced on Thanksgiving of Boebert suggesting that Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota could be mistaken for a suicide bomber. Now, Omar, whose family immigrated from Somalia when she was a child, wears a hijab, and she's one of only 2 Muslim members of Congress. In the video, Boebert, talking to supporters, says she's sharing an elevator with Omar when a worried-looking Capitol police officer approaches. They're unable to keep the doors open. Then Boebert says, well, she doesn't have a backpack. We should be fine, and later calls Omar a member of the Jihad Squad. Omar responded, saying Boebert had made the story up and denounced the remarks as anti-Muslim bigotry. The next day, Boebert released a statement apologizing to, quote, anyone in the Muslim community I offended. Some pointed out that that's a classic non-apology apology, saying she was sorry if what she said offended anyone rather than saying she was sorry for what she'd said. Now, Boebert insists that she wasn't aiming her remarks at Muslims in general, just Representative Omar, but Omar, her allies, and Muslim advocacy groups say that one member of Congress joking that another member of Congress could be mistaken for a suicide bomber is the kind of Islamophobia faced by Muslims every day, and that it cannot be tolerated. Now, Omar pointed to a recent study out of California that found 80% of American Muslims believe Islamophobia isn't taken seriously by civil society, corporate, or political leaders. Congress's silence and inaction on what she calls anti-Muslim hate, Omar said, is telling. By midweek, a number of progressive Democrats were calling on House leadership to do something, including possibly censuring Boebert. But Colorado's Democratic House delegation, like House leadership, is demanding that Republicans take care of it, and they're stopping short of calling for a censure, like happened last month with Arizona Representative Paul Gosar, who was stripped of his committee assignments after he posted an animated video online that depicted him killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the progressive New York Democrat known as AOC. Earlier this year, the House did the same thing to Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene for remarks she'd made before she was elected. Democrats say they're not sure if they want to start getting in the habit of censuring and stripping committee assignments from Republicans every time they say something offensive. There's another thing at work here. Democrats have been cautious about punishing Boebert because House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it could only draw more attention to her remarks. But she said, this is hard because people are doing this for the publicity. At this point, we don't know what's going to happen. But I think we've got to guarantee Lauren Boebert is going to continue being in the news.
I think that would be a safe bet, Ernest. I would almost certainly take you up on that one. And believe it or not, we're going from that news to potentially even more somber news. And we're going to bring in Chief Capitol Correspondent Marianne Goodland. Marianne, we're talking you and I right now because former Supreme Court Justice Greg Hobbs passed away earlier this week at the age of 76. Now, you knew him, you covered him, so I wanted to have you on today, just talk a little bit about the man and any memories you might have of him now that we are kind of in this phase where we're kind of commemorating and remembering his life.
Justice Hobbs served 19 years on the Colorado Supreme Court. He was the undeniable expert on Colorado water law. Nobody knew or loved water law probably more than Greg Hobbs. He devoted his life to it. He had been a water attorney with the Colorado Attorney General's office, and he also founded Water Education Colorado. And the thing about Justice Hobbs that I remember is what an incredibly generous person he was with his time. I did a very lengthy piece upon his retirement in 2015, where we sat and just chewed the fat over water law. It was a supremely satisfying interview, and I don't know that I've enjoyed doing interviews as much as I enjoyed doing that one. We talked about everything dealing with water law and a few other things too. When he was first nominated or appointed to the court by Governor Roy Romer, Romer cautioned him about putting poetry into his opinions, and he said, "Don't do that," which was really funny because that's one of Hobbes's fondest activities. He loved being a poet, so he kind of went, "Well, okay, that's just fine." Justice Hobbs is one of three former members of the High Court who passed away this year. That also includes former Chief Justice Mary Malarkey and former Justice Greg Kellum Scott, who was the court's first and I believe only African-American member. And Justice Malarkey was also a groundbreaker in her own right. Colorado has lost some real legal giants in 2021.
Well, thank you, Marianne, for coming on and bringing us those memories of Justice Hobbs. And thank you to Ernest for his always active reporting on everything from the campaign trail to Congress. For both of those fabulous reporters, for myself, Pat Poblete, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week. We'll be seeing you again soon.